Hey, Adam here, and I got a real treat for you today. Not only am I reviewing this Speed Deer Loeta Cobra reel, but I'm getting a Bass Pro to do a review on it too, and to tell you what he thinks about it. You are not gonna wanna miss this. So a couple of features before we have our guest on. Number one is this comes with a zinc alloy main pinion gear, very strong. It's got 12+1 stainless steel bearings in it, which is very nice. It also has a one-way clutch bushing, a one-way clutch plate, stainless steel washer, and shielded stainless steel bearings. I don't know, man, this thing just feels really nice. I've not used Baitcasters a lot. Our Bass Pro has used them for years and years and years. He's probably made millions of casts with it, and so I can't wait to hear his opinion on it. But this thing feels pretty good to me. Let's see what he thinks. With me, this is Tyler Berger. He runs Bass Fishing HQ YouTube channel, like 50,000 subscribers, almost there.
Close.
Trying to push you over that 50K.
Close.
Oh man, and this guy, he's taught me about 95% of what I know about fishing. And on most of it on this water here behind me, or his YouTube videos. But so anyway, one of the things that he's been bugging me about for years is, Adam, you have to switch to a Baitcaster. And almost all of my rods are spinning rods. I'm just very comfortable with spinning rods. And but so I brought him out on the channel today to teach us about Baitcasters. So welcome, Tyler.
How's it going? I'm excited to be here. It's exciting to just talk about fishing. Gotta love it.
This dude's a local legend, okay? He won the tournament series this year. Everybody in this area knows him. He just did a couple collaboration videos with some high profile. He's fished with the top fishermen all over the United States. So the fact that he's not wearing his little sponsored stuff here for this video is really nice. Although if you do want to pick up a bass hat, I'm sure he'd want you to pick up one of those bass hats. But all right, let's talk Baitcasters.
Let's talk about it.
So first of all, why would I want to switch from a spinning reel to a Baitcaster reel?
With a Baitcaster, you actually tend to just, the biggest thing that you really have is control. You have more control over your lure with a Baitcaster than you do with a spinning reel. You're a little bit more accurate. You know, a lot of guys talk about being very accurate with a spinning rod and reel. I'm gonna say that you can be more accurate with a Baitcaster. And the big thing there is, like everyone says, well, I can skip with the spinning reel, you know, and that's true. It's easy. A spinning rod and reel setup will allow you to be better, like especially as a beginner, even an intermediate fisherman. But you really do want to transition to a Baitcaster for a number of lures. A spinnerbait is a perfect example. Like, you can throw a spinnerbait with your spinning outfit, right? It's no problem. If you pick up a 3/8 ounce or a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait, those are probably the most traditional size spinnerbaits that we use. If you go to cast it underneath of a tree, you can really sidearm that thing in. You're going to be able to use your thumb to apply a little bit of pressure and get that bait exactly where you want it to go, and then be able to stop it really quick once it gets underneath. You can use everything on a spinning rod, a spinning reel. You can use a big swim bait on a spinning rod, a spinning reel, but it's going to be better with your Baitcaster. So
now this guy, I mean, I've fished with him several times, and he puts that bait exactly where he says he's going to put it every time. He'll skip it right under that all the way to the bank, no problem. He's got videos on how to skip stuff. So when he says it's more accurate on a Baitcaster, I believe, because I've never been able to put my bait exactly where you've put it. Now, there's a lure hanging from that tree over there, and Tyler asked me if it was mine when he walked up, because if I was casting with this right now, it probably would be. But so when I look at a spinning reel, so you've got one of your rods here.
Sure.
I mean, we basically have this drag on the top and this bail. Yeah. When I look at this, there's just all kinds of knobs and settings, and I know you've taken the side cover off of these. Like, tell me what's a setup on something like this, and how are you going to control it versus this seems so simple?
Yeah, well, the spinning reel was made to be simple. Okay. So that's the first thing that you should know. But I think the Baitcaster was invented before the spinning reel, and then they made the spinning reel for that exact thing. You have a fixed spool here that doesn't move. So when you go to cast it, the line just comes off. Where
Yeah.
this spool, as you can see, it's moving. You know, so you have to get your line and that spool to move to be able to cast it. So the spinning rod and reel was made for easy use. It was literally made for that. So
I'm a simpleton. He's telling me I'm a simpleton.
But again, you know, the Baitcaster, you know, you just, like you said, you have a lot more control. You can really manage bigger line on a Baitcaster better.
Yeah, because on a spinning line, if I put 15 or 20 pound, that thing's gonna come off like a spring.
Yeah.
I can't keep it on. It's gonna be twisted all the time. And so I can put, you have actually right here, one of yours with you, you have 20 pound fluorocarbon on here.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And if I were to put that on my spinning rod, I'm not gonna be able to keep that on my spool.
And it's not going to come off nicely. Now, before we even talk about this, you know, braided line has really changed a lot of that stuff, because I can put 20 pound braid on here and that's going to be fine. But when it comes to monofilament fluorocarbon line, if you put that on a spinning rod, especially one that's only this size, you know, a bass rod and reel, it's not going to come off. It's going to want to jump off the spool on you. And the other thing is, when line comes off of a spinning reel, it comes off in coils.
Right.
So if you watch it in slow motion, that's why your guides are a lot bigger on a spinning rod and they taper down, because it's got to wrangle those coils down before it can go straight out. Now, if you look at the Baitcast,
they're tiny.
They're a lot smaller, because the way it comes off of that reel, it's in a straight line. So that's one reason why the Baitcaster can manage heavier line a lot better than a spinning rod.
Another thing I notice about bait casting rods compared to spinning is this thing can throw a 2 ounce.
Yeah.
And it says it can handle 20 pound, and this is 7'5".
Yeah.
Those numbers seem a lot higher than a spinning rod.
And they are. Like, that's another advantage here. Like, you can use heavier lines, heavier lures. Like, the way a spinning or a bait cast rod is made, they tend to have more of a little bit more backbone here. You know, if you were to throw a 2 ounce lure on this, it's still going to be a lot. That's going to be the top end that this rod can handle, but this rod here is not going to handle it at all.
Right.
And you could use a lot bigger.
Yeah, that one says
rod.
half an ounce. That one says half an ounce.
So you could use a lot bigger spinning rod and reel combo. Like, you think of the guys,
catfish guys, or the Gulf of Mexico, or
and the thing is, like, a lot of guys in the ocean use spinning rods when they're even fishing lures. So you think, well, why wouldn't they use a bait cast rod? Well, the biggest thing that a spinning reel has an advantage of is typically they can hold more line. If I'm catching a tuna, they could spool a bait cast rod, but with the amount of line you can put on a spinning reel, it's very rare that they're going to spool the spinning reel. So
you're not going to spool this with a bass.
No.
Yeah.
It's probably, honestly, most of my bait, like, I use the drag system on a spinning reel. I very rarely use it with a bait caster. Most of the time it's pretty cinched down, and I honestly use my thumb. So when I'm reeling a fish in, I just click my little lever there, and I control what the fish can pull out with my thumb. I just prefer that way. Not everyone's like that, but what I don't like to do is when I'm reeling in a fish, and if that drag is set a little bit loose, you're actually reeling and not gaining anything. And I just don't like that feeling. It feels like I don't have enough pressure on that bass to keep it hooked. Okay. So I control everything mostly with my thumb.
So when you talk about drag on the Baitcaster, where's that?
So the drag is this star drag system here. So
I have a purple star here, like a ninja star from the 80s.
You have a ninja star. So that's where it is. That's where it's located.
And which way's tight and which way's loose?
Well, the tighter, you'll actually be able to physically feel it. So the
like a screw.
Yeah. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. Okay. So the looser it is, like this one, I'm spinning clockwise if I'm looking at the reel like this. Yeah. And it's getting looser. And then if I go the opposite way, it's actually getting tighter. Okay. Which is actually increasing the drag.
That's backwards. Okay, because that's a left hand. This is a right hand one.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, it's probably backwards.
Now, you also have this knob right here.
Yep.
And I think you keep yours pretty loose.
Yeah. So that is a spool tensioner knob, and the biggest thing with that, like the way that I set it, you know, as a beginner, you can. If you look at this and you may be able to zoom in, the looser you go on the spool tensioner, the more that this spool is actually going to go back and forth in your reel. So what I like to do right now is I will get it all the way loose, and then I will slowly increase this to where there's just a little bit of play. Like I just want to barely make that thing move side to side. So once you hit about that zone, that's usually good for casting. Now, if you're a beginner and you haven't casted a Baitcaster a whole lot, you're going to want to increase that spool tensioner just a little bit past that point, so that it's not going to be moving side to side at all. That's the best way to set those up.
Okay. Now, I've got 2 reels here. These are brand new reels, and I know you're sponsored, but this isn't your channel, so suckers! This is a Loeda Speed Deer, a brand new product that came out. They've got some pretty impressive specs on this thing, actually.
They do.
Let me get my sheet here.
I'll tell you, just looking at it before you read off, a couple things that I really like about it, just looking at this reel, is one, you have these, the handle. I like a big handle. Some Baitcast reels come with a little bit shorter handle, and I just like to have more leverage. It's
the length of that handle.
So the length of that handle, I'm not sure how many millimeters it is. It'll probably say on there, but usually that 100 millimeter-ish is what I really like.
4 inches.
4 inches. Now the other thing is this EVA foam grip handles. Really like these. Really, really like these a lot. You can see they're on some of my reels too.
Yeah.
Not all reels have that, and a lot actually don't. It's starting to become more of a trend. But this, they last forever. 2, they kind of mold to your fingers before long. And 3, the slippage. There's no slippage on them. So that's one thing that I, just looking at it, I really, really like. So the other thing is you have your drag system on the side. It's very easy to manage. So literally, I'm just gonna spin this, like that's my maximum drag there, and this is my minimum. I can hear it click up each time. So if I'm trying to dial in that reel for the way that I like to cast, I can easily do that.
Oh, this is for casting on the side?
That is your brake system. So you have a spool tensioner.
That's probably why I messed up so much.
So you have a spool tensioner, and you have your brakes on the side.
Got it. So, never used this one.
So this tends to help you a little bit more on the end of your cast. So if
where that thing wants to nest up,
where
as
it wants
it's
to
landing.
nest up, where it wants to backlash.
Oh,
so
okay.
if you're getting a little bit of that backlash, put that up a little bit.
Okay.
Put that up to max. A good setting is just 50-50. Put it right in the middle, and then go from there. You're gonna be able to tell whether you want to go looser or whether you want to go a little tighter.
Sorry, I interrupted you. What else did you notice? So you said you noticed the drag's nice and easy on this side.
Yeah, so we got a good brake system, good EVA grips. I really like the size of the reel. It's a low profile reel is a lot easier to use throughout the day, especially if you're using a lure that has a lot of movement to it, where I'm using the reel a lot, maybe like a top water or a jerk bait. If I'm constantly kind of moving this reel, it's low profile. It's easy to fit in my hand or even like a small person's hands. So that's just a couple of things, just looking at it, that I like. Another thing is it says on the side 12+1.
Yeah.
So it probably has 12 ball bearings plus maybe a bearing on there. So that's going to have a lot of, it's going to make your reels just smoother. It's going to make them feel smoother. So,
one of the things I noticed early on in my fishing is when I bought reels with higher bearings, that changed. Yeah. I'm pretty sure the first ones I bought had no bearing or 2 bearings or something like that. And that for me has been good. What about this? They both have gear ratios on the side of them.
Yeah.
What, like one says 6.3 and one says 7.1. What's the deal with that?
So, if you don't know what the gear ratio means, basically this says 6.3 to 1. This means every time I turn this handle once, that spool inside turns 6.3 times. So
why would you want a 6.3 versus a 7.1?
So it's all going to be dependent on the lure that you're using. So a lure that you use, that you actually, for instance, with a chatterbait, you use the reel to work the lure a lot of times, right? You're straight dragging the lure in by the reel. So with that being said, it's like riding a bike through grass. If you're really cranking, it's going to be a little bit easier with a lower gear ratio, right? It's going to be easier on
so
your
it's
hand.
like gears on my bike.
It's like gears on your bike. You should be pretty familiar with that.
Yep.
But anyways, that helps out a lot. Now the one thing you do miss is, and you have just more torque. So like sometimes if you're reeling in a big fish and a lot of slop, you'll get to a point where you can only pull the rod so much. So having the extra cranking power can help you get that fish out. But if I'm using a lure that I'm using the rod to work for the majority part of the time, you know, like a worm or a frog, I'm not really using the reel. I'm using the rod to move it, and I'm just catching up. I'm picking up the slack. With this,
so you want a higher one?
I want a higher gear ratio. So one, it's just easier. It's less reels. It's less.
So this is a downhill reel. This is an uphill reel because okay.
So and as you can see, that if you look at them, the two spools on these are actually
that one's
different.
thicker. That one's smaller.
Yeah. So this would be a great crankbait reel. Absolutely great because I have a lot of line. I can make a long cast. And I got that 6.3. It's going to be perfect, like as far as the way it feels on my hand. Where this one, you know, I might use it to flip and pitch or something really close to the bank, like a Texas rig. So I don't need the line capacity on it.
Okay. Man, that's a lot about Baitcasters. So I know you showed me a cheat on how to spool one of these. How would you spool up a Baitcaster?
You can spool up a Baitcaster really any way that you want to, I guess. Like, there's really not a right and wrong way. The biggest thing is as you want the spool to be coming, you want the spool to be spinning.
That's why there's a hole in that one.
Yeah, so that's where you can stick, you know, get your buddy to do the pencil. That's fine to do that. You know, sometimes I just hold the spool like this, and I'll literally just sit here with this in my crotch. And I'll have the line going up through, and I'll just put it on like that. Like that's 90% of the time how I do it. The biggest thing is you want there to be a little bit of tension as you're putting it on here. I always spool up some generic, cheap monofilament line that I can get at, you know, Target or Meyer first. So that's my backing. So I'm gonna spool up, and I'm gonna spool up maybe a third of it, maybe even half at times, depending on the technique that I'm using with that cheap stuff. And then on top of that, I'll tie them together, and I'll put on my fluorocarbon, or I'll put on braided line, whatever that reel is kind of designated for. So that way you're not wasting, because by the time this is the other thing with baitcast and spinning rods, if you don't have your line all the way to pretty much the edge there, you're losing out on your gear ratio, one. So the further down it goes, the less line you're going to be taking in, and big time casting distance.
I noticed that on my spinning rod too. If it's low, that it's not going.
Low, and same thing here. Like, it might be easier for you to manage if it's low, but you're not going to be able to cast and hit, you know, the light over there, where I'm going to be able to cast past it with a fully spooled line. So that's something, when I spool it, you know, like I always have some sort of backing on there. And usually I'm spooling it by myself.
I actually have a broken rod that I broke, and it goes to the first eye, and then I run it through there. And then I'm an engineer, so I have some nerdy things at home that I do that. I don't like spooling it up on the boat, but I don't have 25 reels or rods on my boat either. And Tyler has one for every single thing.
That's true.
I want to put some line on this and see what you think.
Okay.
Okay, so you're dialing in the reel right now. We're getting ready to cast it. We got the line on it. He's getting the spool where he wants, the drag where he wants. This is really light line. It's only 8 pound.
Yeah.
And then we have a 3/8 chatterbait on there, or less.
So whenever you're first starting with the reel, don't wing your first cast with a new reel. Like, just make some easy casts. You just want to try to dial the reel in. Try to get it, you know. Another thing is like, you know, your reel is half the process here. Like, these rods are actually a lot bit different. Like, this one is more of a 80-20 bend, where that one has a little bit more of a parabolic action, maybe more of a 60-40. So they're going to cast a little bit differently because of that too. But I'm just trying to judge the reel right now and kind of get it dialed in. It's starting to feel about right.
What initial impressions as you're setting it up?
Initial impressions is it feels really good. Like it feels, I've used a lot of cheap reels over my days. Like I used to buy a lot of $50 and $60 reels, and it definitely doesn't feel, what's the retail price? Like it doesn't feel like that at all.
I don't know what the retail price is.
So that would be interesting to see. But right now, I mean, it's feeling very good. It feels sturdy, I guess you can say, is the big thing. Like I feel like a cheap reel, it's almost like you feel it moving, flexing, you know. And your engineering background, that probably makes sense more to you. But it feels good. It's really starting to cast good. Sometimes getting your line wet helps with your casting as well. Like this is fresh line we just put on there, and I was putting pressure on it. I was bringing it in, so sometimes that digs into itself, especially with light line. But as you can see, it's really starting to cast pretty good. So I'm just kind of slowly messing around with the brakes here, and my messing around with the brakes and messing around with my spool tensioner there to just kind of get it to feel just right, where I can really make a good cast with it. So this one's feeling like, as you can see, I'm slowly kind of putting a little more power behind the cast, and that's just something, again, you don't want to come out here first time ever and just sidearm wing the thing and it's blown up. That is probably what happens to 90% of guys, is especially if they haven't used a baitcast reel a lot. They get out here, they think they get it all set up, or they do like these really, really small like pitches where they're just kind of like doing this, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna set it off that. You want to make like a regular cast, but you don't want to put a lot of power behind it. You know, just a real simple cast, and just kind of set it from there. Right now, this one's starting to feel good to me.
And you've taken about 20 or 30 casts right now.
Yeah.
Just to quote set it up.
Yeah.
Which may be a whole day of fishing for me. Yeah, he just threw it like 40 yards.
So as you can see, like this one it's I'm getting confidence in it is the big thing. Like I know I can make a cast without it just blowing up. So no matter how experienced you are with these, at some point in time you could still blow one up. Every now and then, like I've had several times where I make I try to skip a cast or whatever, or I hit a wave just wrong and it just blows up. Or what,
if that thing stops before you expect it to stop,
yeah, it's gonna be off. So there you can see I got a little bit of a backlash there, not too bad. So the best thing is you can usually just pull them out with this. So I had loosened up my drag just a tick. That one's really down there. Oh, and a side note, I didn't do it there, but when you're picking out a backlash, put it in the water. Guys, if they're on the boat or on the shore, they'll put it in the grass, or they'll let it lay on the shore like that, and it's everywhere on everything. By the time, if you put it in the water, one, it's gonna stay nice and neat, but two, like I can pile the line on top of itself in the water, and when I bring it out, it's gonna not be all tangled and twisted together. So wing that cast, nothing, no backlash on that one. Kind of the same force.
We're talking 30, 50 casts now to get it dialed into where you feel comfortable to cast it as far as you'd want to.
Yeah, and it's a brand new reel, it's brand new line, it's brand new rod. So that first time, like, take your time with it. There's no point in really, and I still mess with them, like, so it feels good now. The big test will be when we switch around and cast it into the wind. That's the other thing is, we're kind of casting across the wind right now, and that's going to perform a little bit differently than when we cast it with if I cast it with the wind, I might be able to go completely loose on everything and just cast it. But if I do that same thing into the wind, it's not going to be a good deal. So sometimes when you're out there, depending on how your boat is situated, or if you're fishing from the shore, you might have to make those little minor adjustments. And if I'm casting into the wind, typically I'm going to tighten up things a little bit. If I'm casting with the wind, I can loosen things up. So So still pretty good there. But I mean, it's a very good feeling reel. This combo feels really good in my hand. The way that I'm holding it, it fits comfortably. I could fish this all day long and really just hopefully catch a billion bass.
All the way to the other shore.
Where you want it to.
Boom. I know you wanted that to be 1.5 or 2 foot further, right?
It's pretty shallow right there against the shore. So
Oh, so he put it exactly where he wanted.
I'll take it.
So if you were, okay, so if I were to tell you, and I don't know the price, but if I were to tell you that's $50, you'd say, no, it's not. It's because you've used $50 reels, that's junk.
Yeah, I would say that this would, like if you put this in my hand, I would probably think it's a $150 reel, I'm guessing.
That's what
just
it feels
just
like
the way
to you.
that it feels, you know. And I've used it for 5 minutes, not all day,
right?
But still, just the way that it feels, the tightness of everything, the way it's casting, it seems to be just fine. Like it's really casting, I guess you can say, better than I expected it to even. So.
Nice.